Programming is fun. You can make lots of actual fun projects that you enjoy making for maybe the games that you play or the apps that you use, and you can share them with people, and it's very interactive, and you can really use a lot of creativity when it comes to it. So don't get discouraged by it being this boring thing that you're gonna hate. If you do it right, you're probably gonna have some fun and you're gonna make some cool projects, but more on that later. So there's many tutorials for how to learn Python, and most of them mostly focus on theory and just sitting there and studying, and a lot of people make the mistake to just open up one of those tutorials and just type along as they read the code and pretty much learn nothing. And then there's the people that absolutely hate programming because they learned it wrong. So this video is mostly for people that like doing stuff practically and actually learning from projects, and what I consider the most fun way to actually learn Python and stick to it because it's way more entertaining. So first you want to install Python from here, and then you want to install VS Code as well, but VS Code is going to keep asking you about random stuff like Copilot or whatever. You don't really care about any of that. So just click no on all of those, and then once you have Python installed, then make sure you check the option that says add to path, but I'm gonna just link you some tutorials on how to do this. There's plenty of tutorials that show you how to install these too, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna go over like a high level summary. If you need something a bit more detailed, you can just look up a specific guide on how to install Python on VS Code. And then once you have your VS Code open, you're gonna create a new file. You can call it whatever, just don't do what I do and don't call all of them tester because you're gonna forget what each one of them does. So I'll try to give it a bit of a more, just gonna go tester. Because why wouldn't I? And then make sure to name it .py. So that way it's a Python file. Now if you do this for the first time, on the bottom right, it's gonna ask you if you want to install the Python extension. Just click install, and then go into your settings and go into keyboard shortcuts, and then look up run code. So when you look up run code, whatever sort of thing you are programming in here, when you press that hotkey, in my case it's control space, boom, your code runs. So you don't have to click this button every time. And then if you want to stop it, if you have a loop, for example, you can just press Control C after you click on the terminal. Make sure you have the terminal focused, and that way it's actually going to close your script, so you don't have to delete the whole terminal every time. Now there's two ways to learn Python. One of them is for cybersecurity and one of them is for software development. So for cybersecurity, you kind of need to learn automation mostly. You're going to learn automation and usually some sort of web requests or networking related things, and that's pretty much all you need to know for cybersecurity for now. And then whenever you specialize on a field, you'll know what to do from that point on. But mostly for cybersecurity, you want to learn the absolute basic. Automation and web requests mostly is what you're going to be doing. For software development, it's a lot more different. So you're going to need to start off with understanding how an operating system works and some basic computer science principles, because it's going to help you in the long run. And along the way, you're probably also going to learn languages like C and Java and whatever, depending on what you want to learn. But when it comes to Python itself, it's going to be the same in the beginning. You just learn the fundamentals, which I should probably also put up here. The fundamentals basically mean data structures, how programming generally works, loops, functions, stuff like that. They're the same in every language. Like every language has them, and they're not that different between languages, but you should still learn the syntax for how they work in Python specifically. Now, for software development, I would heavily recommend this. This is a Python roadmap that is made for software development, in which you can just click on, let's say, the basics, for example, and this is going to take you to multiple sites. You can choose which one you like the most. It can be articles, Wikipedia pages, blogs, whatever. And this is going to run you through the absolute basic stuff where they give you some exercises or they give you some code that you can run yourself and you can experiment. And then it has pretty much the whole path you need. So you're going to start on the left side. I'm going to put this link in the description, by the way. You're going to start over on the left side. You're going to go left to right, top down. You're going to do all of these, and then you're going to do all of these on the right. Then you're going to continue down, and you're going to do all of these, and then you're just going to follow this general area. If it's a dotted line, that means it's optional for these like bigger structures. Although I would say for computer science, you should learn all of these. Maybe except for this section, you should pretty much learn all of these. And then there's also going to be a very big section for data structure and algorithms right here, in which you have a lot more stuff to learn, and this is going to be very useful for computer science. But if you're only learning Python for cybersecurity, none of this is actually going to concern you. So you have the roadmap, and then you also have countless YouTube guides in which they pretty much teach you the fundamentals of the language. So they're usually longer videos. Some of these are an hour, some of these are 6 hours, but most of the time they teach you pretty much the same thing. So it doesn't even matter who you watch. Lists, arrays, data types, what variables are, all sorts of stuff that's pretty much essential for the language. So it really doesn't matter which one you choose. Just pick the guy that you like listening listening to the most. And now here's the most important part of all of this, and the only reason I decided to make this video, because there are plenty of Python guides out there. My problem with this is that it's not very practical, and it gets quite boring for the average person to just sit there and study, especially if you have something like ADHD, or you're like a gamer that's just used to being very active all the time. It's gonna be very slow paced and boring. So what I like to do is just to make it much more immersive. So here's how I would say you should do it. First of all, you should find whichever playlist you like the most, YouTube videos, whatever it might be. You click on a guy that you like listening to or that you don't find annoying. He's gonna teach you all the basic stuff, but the most important part is that you use VS Code. Please do not use PyCharm. It's gonna be bad. People do not use it in production. People use VS Code. PyCharm also has a lot of issues with interpreters, and if you're new, you might mess up a lot of stuff and it's not gonna work, or it's not gonna compile properly and it's gonna work in the IDE. Just use VS Code. It's just a way better option. Other than that, when you get into the tutorial, you're just gonna watch one section, and then after you finish the basic section in which he explains whatever he's trying to go through, so in this case variables. So here he's assigning the value 10 to a variable called price, and then he's printing price. Now what I want you to do after every single time you learn one of these is I want you to make a small project out of it. It doesn't have to be anything complex, and you can use ChatGPT all you want, you can use Google all you want. It doesn't matter, you're learning. Before I get into the code, just keep in mind you don't have to understand anything that I'm writing. You just need to understand like the general method that I use for learning, and that you should use too if you want interactive learning. You don't actually have to worry about the specific code that I'm writing, so you really don't need to understand what I'm doing. Just get the general method of what I'm trying to do. You're gonna learn all of this stuff later on anyway, so it doesn't matter right now. You're gonna get to a point where all of this is gonna seem very easy to you, even though right now it might seem a bit complicated, and I'm gonna go through a bunch of concepts pretty fast. Anyway, let's get back into it. So in this case, let's say I just learned variables, right? So I would first of all type my own things in there. I wouldn't just copy what he's saying. So I would assign a variable as chest. I'm going to imagine this as a Minecraft chest, and then I'm going to put 32 sticks in there. So now let's say I want to open my chest. I'm going to print the contents of chests, and now I'm going to run this, and boom, I have my 32 sticks. Really cool. Now, if you were to stop there, you wouldn't really learn too much in depth when it comes to this topic. So what I would want you to do is just mess around with it however you can. It doesn't really matter how. See what happens if I turn chest into just 32 instead, and then I print it. It's like, oh, it turned into 32. What if I try it the other way around? Does that work? Can I go 32 equals chest and then run it? And it's like, oh no, this type of thing doesn't work. But what would happen if I would just print out this instead of chests? And oh, look, it says the same thing. But if I were to change chest now and print the same thing out, it doesn't actually work because I'm not printing out the chest anymore. So I just want you to experiment a bunch and see what would happen if you keep changing it around or add all sorts of values to it, and just experiment to see how the code actually works. So now let's say, for example, we just learned variables, right? We have A and B as two variables. So I'm going to say that A is 2, B is 5. So then later, if I would want to print A plus B, I can try that and see what happens. And now, boom, it says 7. But what if I want to swap these two variables, for example? Like, that's a good question. That would be a good thing to use to learn. Here is where the creativity kind of comes into play, because if you don't really know what to do, you're going to get a bit lost. And you can honestly just ask ChatGPT for ideas if you don't have any ideas. And also, ChatGPT is going to be a really good friend for you because it actually knows programming pretty well, especially the basics of programming. If you wanted to make more advanced projects, it's going to be horrible at that. But if you wanted to write small chunks of code, basic functions, stuff like that, it's going to be very good for you. During the beginning. Don't make entire projects for you, just use it as a teacher. Come to it with code, ask it to optimize your code, to correct it, to teach you, but don't use it to just generate pages of code and just paste them in, because you're not going to learn anything, to be honest. So in this case, let's say we want to swap two variables. Well, I could just say that B is going to be equal to A, but then both of them are going to be 2, and then A is still going to be 2, and then if I go A equals B, now I already turned B into 2. So the way that would work is, here I said that B is equal to A. So then because of this, B is going to be equal to 2 because A is equal to 2. But then later on, if I want to say that A is equal to B, then A is just going to be A equal to 2 because we just changed it to 2. So then what we have to do instead is we're going to have C equal to A. So we're going to have a third variable that's going to keep in mind the value of A. And then we can say that A equals B, and then that B equals C. So now if we print A and B here, and then we print A and B here, and then we run it, and also let me just add a few lines so it looks a bit better. There we go. So A was 2, B was 5, and then after we swapped them, which happened here, we made A5 and B2. So we basically swap the variables. Now this would be like a small project that would teach you how variables work. But if you were to not do this and just watch the YouTube guide, then you would skip over this entire section and you wouldn't really know how to swap variables. So then later on, whenever you would need to do more complex operations with variables, you might not have this useful information that you need to know. This is one example. Another example is, let's say, lists, arrays, dictionaries, whatever. So you might have somebody telling you, okay, we're going to make one for apple, banana, grape, and then we're going to define it as A. And then I can print a index 0, which is going to be apple. So by doing this, this is going to print apple. So now we have a list with 3 fruit. This is not very interesting, right? This is probably what you're going to learn in the lists. And just to confirm this, I'm going to check that in the video. Yeah, there we go. So he didn't use fruit in this example. He used names, but it's the same concept. So doing it this way is kind of boring. So let's spice it up a bit. Let's pick your favorite game. Let's say you play League, for example. Or even better, let's just say Valorant. So you would want to make this a bit more personalized. So instead of apples and other fruit, let's go for agents. So I would call my variable agents. Then I would delete all of this, and then let's put in some agent names. There we go. And now if I were to print agents 2, we should get chamber. There we go, that works. So now let's make it like a small project out of this. Now at this point you might wonder, how do I select a random value from here? Like an interesting project would be, I'll make something that randomly decides a random agent for me to play in my next game. And then you do a bit of Googling. You look up, how do I find a random number in Python? And then what you're gonna find out is that it's just import random. You're also gonna have to install some of these modules, and I'll show you how to do that. You just open your CMD, and then you type pip install random, for example. I already have this, so it's not going to work for me, but whatever module you want to install, just type pip install and then the name of the module. Now to select a random integer, so basically a random full number, I'm just going to go random.randint between 1 and 5, let's say. So now this is just going to pick a random number between 1 and 5. It's not really optimal for my list. Actually, let's make it optimized. So my list has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to go from index 0 to index 6. I can put this in here, or I can say that, like, I don't know, random number equals, and then I can put random number in here. There are multiple ways to do this, and you should really experiment. I'll add even more functionality. I'll print out the random number as well. So I'll go print the number was, and then I'll add random number to it. And then I will also make this a string. And now if I run this, boom, the number was 5 and the agent is fade. Fade is at index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that does add up. Now I could also do this. I can say, for your next Swift play, you have to play, and then it's gonna be the agent. So now when I run this, the number was 4. For the next Swift play, you have to play Brimstone. I just made a bit of a cooler script using lists instead of just sitting there and doing the boring stuff. So now I might even decide to use this if I play Valorant, and I might make it pick me random champions. I'm not sure how fun that would be, but you know. There comes optimizing the code. So there's multiple ways to learn to do the same thing, but then some methods are way better than others. So here, adding strings to each other is not really the best way to do it. Normally the way we would do it is we would use a string formatter. So we would go f before the string, and then instead we would just take the variable, we would put it inside of the string, and we would put this thing right here. And boom, that is the way to properly do it. And then this way with a plus is the way to suboptimally do it. So the way to find out what the best way to do this is probably just asking ChatGPT, to be honest. You can just go in there, send it your code and say, I'm new to programming. How would I write this if I were better? Or how should this look if I were to make professional code out of it? And then ChatGPT might tell you, yeah, you know what, this second line, that's not how you do it, this is how you should do it. But either way, this is just like some random project, but this is the entire point. This is what I want you to do. I want you to make projects with whatever you're into, whatever game you're into, activity, whatever it might be, just personalize it a bit. Also, this doesn't just have to be games, it can be sports or music or whatever. There's many public libraries and APIs that let you retrieve like music data or sports or weather or whatever you're into, and you can make all sorts of stuff with it. I'll get more into that later on in a future video probably, but there's plenty of stuff for you to make. It doesn't exclusively have to be for like PC games, also communications apps, and then there's also online games like the reaction time clicker or cookie clicker or piano tiles, for example. So there's like plenty of stuff that you can actually have fun with. It doesn't exclusively have to be PC competitive games, for example. Try to experiment with like random numbers and inputs and outputs and just try to learn it in a more practical way, in a more fun way, whatever interests you. Something important that you should know though is print and input. These are going to be your best friends. So print is pretty straightforward. Any function in Python has the function name, and then it has these right here. These are called parentheses. I know a lot of German people mess this up. It's parentheses. So you have your name and then your parentheses in which you type something that is used by the function. So in this case, whatever I want to print has to be inside of these. There is no space between them. There is no print without them. It's always going to be print, parentheses, and then whatever I want to print is going to be inside here. So this is just going to say inside in my terminal. Now, when it comes to my input, I can just leave it blank, or I can also add a question inside of it, or any sort of text that is basically going to be an instruction for the person using my program to know what I want from them. So in this case, let's say input, type your name, and I'm going to comment out print. So if I were to do this and then I would type my name in, it doesn't really do anything. But then we can also just use this and put it in a variable. And then later on we can do something like print your name is, and then we can add the name to it. So now if I type Bob, it's going to say my name is Bob. Now already just from this, there's going to be a lot of misunderstandings. So here's another thing you can do. You can just take input as it is, delete all of this, and just boom, put it all in one line. So it's gonna say your name is, and then whatever you type in the input field, which is gonna display as type your name in the terminal. So now if we do this, boom, it's the same thing in one line. Now here's the reason I wanted to actually experiment with this. What if you write a more complex function? So let's say I'm gonna print hi 100 times, for example, hi with a space. It's gonna show up like this in the terminal. But what if I want to count every time I say hi and I have the number to which I count it to? So I could go for x in range, let's say 50, or let's just do 100 since I started with 100. I'm gonna want to print out hi plus x times 100, but here it's already gonna get more difficult. So if I try this, it's already not gonna work because x is a number and hi is a string. So for this you would need to know data types. But I'm not going to get too into it now. So then I would just convert this, right? No problem. We make this a string. But now I run it and it's like, oh, this didn't really work. Why is my terminal all broken? And then it's like, oh, well, actually, it's multiplying the string of the number 100 times and then just putting it after hi. And then it's doing that 100 times. So that's not what I want. So now imagine you're making a more complex project that has about this much text on one line, and you have to debug the entire line and figure out what's wrong with it. It's going to be very difficult if you don't understand the fundamentals of the stuff that you're writing because you didn't experiment with it before. In this case, I instantly spotted that this sequence was wrong for me, and that is just multiplying the number and then also printing it 100 times. But if you're just writing this after only going through the tutorial once and not experimenting with stuff, you might not know why this is happening and you're going to have a hard time learning it. So what I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to remove this, and now it's just going to say hi, and then it's going to count to 100. And then if I want to do that entire thing 100 times, I can just put parentheses and then boom. Now imagine you're not used to experimenting with stuff. All of these parentheses are going to get confusing and you're not going to know where to put them for your script to work. So now it's going to do the same thing, but it's going to say hi and the number 100 times instead. Just like this. Now, this is not a very useful project, but it will help you debug and understand the program a bit better. So whenever you make more complex projects, you're not going to run into lots and lots of logic issues. Now I'm going to teach you how you might maybe make a more interesting project, and if you want more complex projects, and if you want me to show you how I usually make my projects, I can do that in a future video. So just like this video if you want it, and maybe tell me in the comments and I'm going to get onto it. But now I'm just going to show you a very simple example. So usually I work in automation. I learned Python by making like bots and cheats for games, Discord bots, programs, whatever might have interacted with the games I used to play or the apps I used to use. And I think that's a really good way to do it. So if you play games, definitely do that. And if not, even if you use apps like Discord or whatever, you can make scripts for those specific apps. So here I'm going to show you like a fun little game to automate. So this is a reaction test site. So you would click on it, it would turn red, you would wait for it to turn green, and then once it turns green, you're supposed to click it as fast as you can, and then boom, you click it, it tells you your reaction time if you use the app properly. So let's try to automate this. First, we need to break down the general system of how this works. So the way we can talk to the computer to understand this entire thing, because it doesn't have the context of the whole game, all the computer needs to know is that I will click one time, it's gonna see a color that isn't green, and then the second it sees green on any pixel that I select, it should just immediately left click. That's all it needs to know. So let's try to program that. So I'm gonna put my Python right here to the side, and I'm gonna import some modules. Now I already know how to do this, but if you are doing this for the first time, and this is an example of a good project that you could do as one of your first projects, after you learn the absolute basic syntax, is you could just go into Google and then you can look up how to find the color of a pixel in Python or something like that, and you're eventually gonna stumble into PyAutoGUI. So I'm going to import PyAutoGUI, and then I believe the syntax was PyAutoGUI.pixel, and then I would have to give it some pixel coordinates. So let's say 1010. And of course I have to print it because otherwise this will do nothing. So yeah, the pixel at number 1010 is going to be 606060. Which I believe is one of these gray colors up here. What I want to do is I want to get a specific pixel from here and scan the color. So in my case, I'm just going to pick any one of these pixels, and to do that, so there's multiple ways to do it, but the way I think I want to do it is I just want to find the position of the pixel by using my mouse. So I'm just going to print the position of my mouse. So that's going to be PyAutoGUI.position. So now if I run this, it's going to tell me the position of my mouse as well as the color of the pixel 1010. So for this, I'm just going to use these two together to get the color of this pixel. So I just hovered over this pixel right here, and now I'm going to get the color of that pixel. Just like that, and now I don't need to track my cursor anymore. So now one of these pixels, which in this case is blue, and then it's going to turn green whenever we need to click it, is going to get tracked. So I want to find the color of the green pixel. So I'm going to start this, I'm going to wait for it to turn green, and then I'm going to run this. There we go. So now, oh my bad, too many parentheses. There we go. So now this is the color that I need to look out for, right here. So I'm going to put it here. Now that I know the pixel and the coordinates and the color, I can just make a loop. So I'm going to make an if statement. I'm going to say if the color of this pixel is equal to this, if the color of the pixel at these coordinates, which is one of these pixels, is equal to the color green, which is the specific color I got from the website, otherwise it's not going to work, then I'm going to print, let's say I see green, so that we know that this works. Now, the last thing I need to do is I need to put this in a loop so that it constantly scans for it, because otherwise this is just going to scan for it once. So then I'm going to go while true to put this in an infinite loop. If it sees that the pixel is green, it's going to type I see green. If not, it's going to type I don't see green. So now let's try to run the script. So right now it's spamming my terminal over here on the right with I don't see green. But now if it's going to turn green, boom, it says I see green. So now we made a script that properly sees the color of the website. So now instead of printing I see green, we can simply make it click. So in this case, I'm just going to go PyAutoGUI.click because it also has a click function. And then after it clicks, I'm going to need it to chill a bit so it doesn't spam click too many clicks. I'm just going to break it. I'm just going to stop the entire loop, which is also going to stop the program by typing break after it clicks, just like this. Got to put it in the correct block. So now I should just be able to run this, and now it should automatically click whenever this turns green. Boom, there it is. It clicked it in 13 milliseconds. If you want me to make videos like this in the future, where I take more complex projects and I take you along with me and I explain what I'm thinking and what I'm doing, then tell me in the comments and I'll make a whole series of it. But for now, just make sure to stay consistent and have fun. Because if you're not going to have fun, if you're going to feel like this is dreadful, you're probably not gonna last too long, or you're just not gonna have a good time, and there's just no reason to do that when you can honestly just enjoy it. You can manifest your creativity, you can have a good time. So I would say just try to have a good time with it, and you're gonna learn it really fast. Don't worry about learning it properly, as some might say, because over time you're just gonna get better at it. It's not that hard of a language. It's not that hard to learn to program. It has a bit of a learning curve in the beginning, but then you kind of get used to it, and your progress starts getting exponentially faster, and it's just so much more enjoyable to do more and more advanced projects. So yeah, just stick to it. If you have any questions, you can just drop them in the comments. I read every question, I reply to every comment. If you have any more advanced questions about cybersecurity and stuff, then you can watch my other cybersecurity videos, or just message me on Discord, and my Discord tag is going to be in the other videos. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and have fun.